After 40 long years on the bench, Judge Frank Caprio thought he had seen it all. Every excuse, every attitude, every kind of person who stood before the law. But that morning, that quiet Wednesday in March, someone was about to prove him wrong. It began like any other day. The courtroom smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Christina, his longtime clerk, placed his black coffee, no sugar, no cream, just the way he liked it, right beside the case files. But when she leaned in and whispered, "Judge, you might want to look at the 1030 case," something in her tone told him this wasn't just another ticket. The name on the file read Vanessa Montgomery. Multiple traffic violations. Reckless driving. Leaving the scene. Nothing unusual until he noticed a note scribbled in the margin. Third offense this year. Husband, Richard Montgomery. And that name, Richard Montgomery, was known across Providence. A man whose money built hospitals, whose influence reached city halls. A man used to getting his way. But then something caught the judge's eye. There was a small sticky note attached to the file. Federal prosecutor requested to observe this hearing. Federal prosecutors at a traffic hearing? That didn't happen. Ever. That's when Judge Caprio knew something much bigger was hiding beneath the surface. He sipped his coffee slowly. "All right," he muttered. "Let's see what this is about." The morning rolled on. Minor tickets, honest mistakes, people taking responsibility. Then came a nurse named Maria Santos, tired, wearing scrubs, hands trembling as she held her expired registration papers. When asked why she hadn't renewed it, she looked the judge in the eye and said softly, "Your Honor, my daughter's been sick. I work nights at the hospital. I forgot, but I fixed it right away." The courtroom was silent. Judge Caprio could see the exhaustion, the sincerity, the dignity. He dismissed her case with respect, told her, "You're the kind of person who makes this community proud." And just when she turned to leave, from the back of the courtroom came a sharp laugh. A mocking, careless laugh. Everyone turned. That's when he saw her for the first time, Vanessa Montgomery. Designer clothes. Diamond jewelry that sparkled even under the dull courtroom lights. Phone in hand. Smirking as if she didn't belong in the same room as everyone else. The nurse's eyes fell to ground, but she held her dignity and walked out proudly. Judge Caprio watched, his jaw tightening. But he had no idea that the woman who just laughed at another's humility was about to face the harshest lesson of her life. When 10:30 struck, Christina called her name, case number 2024, TR 1847, Vanessa Montgomery. The courtroom doors opened, and she walked forward like it was a runway. Chin high, perfume lingering in the air, her lawyer trailing behind like an accessory. The judge adjusted his glasses, glanced at her file once more, and said calmly, "Mrs. Montgomery, you're charged with reckless driving, leaving the scene and speeding in a school zone. Is this correct?" Vanessa laughed, not nervously, but arrogantly. "Your Honor, I barely tapped the car. I was running late for a spa appointment. Hardly worth all this drama." The courtroom went quiet again. Even her own lawyer looked embarrassed. Judge Caprio took a deep breath. "Patience, Frank," he thought. "Let her show you who she is." He read the police report. $8,000 in damage. 2 other vehicles struck. A teacher had to jump out of the way. But Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. "That's a bit exaggerated, don't you think? Nobody was hurt. I'll pay the fine and be on my way. Can I just write a check?" And that's when the air changed. Because in that single moment, with that single smirk, she revealed everything. She didn't believe in justice. She believed in price tags. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Montgomery, this is a court of law, not a shopping mall." She smiled again. "Well, can I pay by credit card? I get points." And just like that, the room froze. Christina lowered her head. The spectators stared in disbelief. But deep down, Judge Caprio knew this wasn't going to end like the others. Because in this courtroom, money was about to meet justice, and justice was not for sale. But she had no idea the next file on that desk held the truth that would turn her whole world upside down. Vanessa stood at the podium like she owned it. Her diamond bracelet shimmered with every move. her perfume filling the quiet courtroom air. You could almost hear the unspoken words in her posture. "I'm not like the rest of you." Judge Caprio, calm but sharp as ever, looked down at her file again. 3 prior incidents. Each one brushed away with a fine, a lawyer, and a smile. But today, things felt different. He looked up and said, "Mrs. Montgomery, this is your 3rd violation this year. But this time it's more serious. You left the scene of an accident in a school zone." She laughed again, this time louder. "Oh, Your Honor, please. It was barely a scratch. My car's insurance could buy that whole parking lot." The crowd shifted uneasily. Even her lawyer, James Henderson, rubbed his forehead like he'd been through this before. "Mrs. Montgomery," he whispered, "please, let me do the talking." But Vanessa raised a manicured hand. "Relax, James. I've got this." And right there, in front of everyone, she made her first mistake, underestimating the courtroom. Judge Caprio sat back, quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Montgomery," he said softly, "do you realize a teacher had to jump out of the way of your car?" She shrugged, smiling as if it were gossip, not danger. "Nobody was hurt, right? So what's the big deal?" The judge's expression didn't change, but his silence spoke volumes. But what she didn't know was that silence in Judge Caprio's courtroom is never a good sign. He leaned forward. "You seem to believe you can fix everything with money, that if you write a check, the damage disappears." Vanessa smiled wider. "Well, isn't that how it usually works?" Her tone was sweet, but the words dripped with arrogance. The judge raised an eyebrow. "You think justice is for sale?" "Oh, come on," she said, tilting her head. "We both know how this goes. I pay the fine. You get your fee. Everyone's happy." The room went still. Even the air felt heavier. But then something unexpected happened. Judge Caprio slowly stood up, a gesture he rarely used unless the moment demanded gravity. He looked her directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Montgomery, I've been on this bench for over 40 years. I've seen people who made mistakes and came here ready to make them right. And then I've seen people who believe the law is beneath them." Vanessa blinked, almost confused that he was daring to speak to her that way. "Are you finished, Judge?" she said sharply. "Because I'd really like to pay my fine and leave. I have a lunch reservation." But she had no idea her lunch plans were about to be replaced by handcuffs. The judge took a breath, opened the file again, and spoke evenly. "The fine for reckless driving and leaving the scene is $500. Vanessa grinned. "Oh, good. That's it? Wonderful. Can I pay by card?" She reached into her designer handbag, pulling out a gleaming platinum card and waving it slightly, as if to remind everyone of who she was. The spectators whispered among themselves. Christina, the clerk, didn't even try to hide her disgust. Judge Caprio didn't respond. He simply watched her, not the bag, not the jewelry, but her character unraveling right in front of everyone. "Mrs. Montgomery," he said finally, "this is a courtroom, not a country club. You will address me as Your Honor, and you will treat these proceedings with respect." Her smile faltered for the first time. "Excuse me," she said. "My husband plays golf with the mayor. We donated to the new courthouse wing. I think we both know this little situation doesn't need to be dramatic." Her words echoed, every syllable dripping with privilege. But what came next turned the entire courtroom upside down, because she didn't know someone else was listening. In the back row, a man in a gray suit scribbled in a notebook. Judge Caprio noticed him again, the one Christina had mentioned earlier, the federal prosecutor's observer. He wasn't watching the judge. He was watching Vanessa. Judge Caprio folded his hands on the bench. "Mrs. Montgomery, may I remind you, donations do not buy exemptions from the law." Vanessa smirked. "Oh, please. Everyone has a price, Judge. Even justice." The courtroom gasped. Her lawyer whispered frantically, "Vanessa, stop. You're making it worse." But she ignored him. Judge Caprio straightened, eyes steady. "No, Mrs. Montgomery, justice doesn't have a price. That's what makes it justice." The silence after those words was chilling. The air felt heavier, charged. The tension between arrogance and authority hung like a storm cloud ready to break. And then the storm arrived. Judge Caprio reached for another folder, one he hadn't opened yet, the one marked Confidential Federal Coordination. He looked up at the observer. The man nodded. The judge turned back to Vanessa, his voice calm but sharp. "Mrs. Montgomery, you seem eager to pay your fine and leave. But before we do that, there's another matter we need to discuss." Her confidence wavered. "Another matter?" "Yes," said the judge. "Some new information came in this morning from the federal prosecutor's office, and I think you'll find it quite interesting." That's when the laughter stopped and reality walked in. The room grew still. You could feel it, that quiet tension right before something big happens. Judge Caprio opened the second folder carefully, sliding on his reading glasses. Vanessa tilted her head, impatient. "Your Honor, can we please finish this? I really don't have time for..." "Mrs. Montgomery," the judge interrupted, his tone suddenly firm. "You might want to make time, because what was about to happen would change everything she thought she knew about power." He glanced toward the man in the gray suit at the back of the courtroom. "Would the representative from the U.S. Attorney's Office please step forward?" The entire courtroom turned as the man stood. He buttoned his jacket and spoke with calm authority. "Good morning, Your Honor. David Chun, Assistant U.S. Attorney. I believe this court has jurisdiction to acknowledge new charges against the defendant, Mrs. Vanessa Montgomery." Vanessa froze. "New what?" she stammered. Her lawyer blinked, confused. "Your Honor, this is a traffic matter. I wasn't informed of any additional charges." Judge Caprio looked at Chun. "Mr. Chun, please continue." The prosecutor opened his folder. "For the past 18 months, our office has been investigating the Montgomery family for tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes." The courtroom gasped. The reporters in the back started scribbling faster, and Vanessa's confident smirk disappeared, replaced by a trembling silence. That was the moment the courtroom flipped from laughter to disbelief. Chun continued. "We have documented over $2 million in unreported income, fake charitable donations, and shell corporations used to conceal assets. We're ready to present the federal charges today." Vanessa turned pale. Her hand, which moments ago flaunted a diamond ring, now shook uncontrollably. "This can't be happening. James, tell them this is a mistake." Her lawyer's voice was barely a whisper. "Vanessa, I didn't know. I only represented you for the traffic charges." She looked up at the judge, eyes wide and desperate. "Your Honor, please. There has to be some misunderstanding. I didn't." Judge Caprio closed the file slowly. "Mrs. Montgomery, are you saying the U.S. Attorney's Office fabricated evidence?" "No. I don't understand." But for the first time that morning, Vanessa Montgomery wasn't in control. The judge leaned back. His tone softened, not with sympathy, but with gravity. "Mrs. Montgomery, just 2 hours ago, you laughed in this courtroom. You mocked a nurse who came here taking responsibility for a mistake. You bragged about wealth and connections. You believed you were untouchable." He paused, letting his words sink deep. "But the law doesn't care about handbags or golf partners. It cares about truth. And right now, the truth is catching up to you." Tears began to fill her eyes. Her lips trembled. "Please, Your Honor, let me call my husband. He'll fix this." David Chin stepped forward, his expression professional, but unyielding. "Your husband won't be taking your call, Mrs. Montgomery. He was arrested this morning at his office. Federal agents are searching your home as we speak." Her face went completely still. The color drained from her cheeks. The courtroom went silent, except for quiet, rhythmic clicking of a reporter's pen. And that's when the laughter that once filled the courtroom turned into the sound of reality breaking. She whispered, "No, this isn't real. It can't be." Judge Caprio's voice broke through softly but firmly. "Mrs. Montgomery, I warned you earlier, this isn't a country club. This is a court of law. You can't write a check to erase what you've done." Tears streamed down her face. Her mascara smeared. Her jewelry now felt like chains. "Please, I'll pay it all back. Whatever it takes. Just don't let them take me. But it was too late. Attorney Chin nodded toward the agents waiting at the back. One of them approached, pulling handcuffs from his belt. Mrs. Montgomery, Chin said quietly, "You're under federal arrest. You have the right to remain silent." Vanessa stepped back, shaking her head. "No, please. Your Honor, I have children." Judge Caprio's eyes softened, but his tone stayed steady. "So does Mrs. Santos, the nurse you laughed at, the woman who works through the night to raise her kids. But she stood here with dignity. You came here with arrogance. Now you face the consequences." And just like that, the courtroom that once echoed with laughter now echoed with justice. The handcuffs clicked shut. Every eye in the room watched as the woman who mocked others' struggles was led away. Trembling, silent, defeated, Christina whispered softly, almost to herself, "I've never seen anything like that." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "Neither have I. Christina, neither have I." He tapped his gavel once, not loudly, but with finality. "Court is in recess." And with that single sound, the morning that began with arrogance ended in accountability. But what came next, after the cameras left and the headlines faded, would prove that sometimes justice doesn't stop with punishment. It begins with redemption. The courtroom door closed behind her. The echo of her designer heels faded, replaced by the heavy silence of consequence. Judge Caprio set his glasses down, exhaled slowly, and whispered, 40 years, and I'm still learning what pride can cost a person." Christina returned with a fresh cup of coffee. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Judge, I've worked here 15 years, but I've never seen something like that." He nodded. "Neither have I, Christina. Neither have I." But what none of them knew yet was that this story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Later that afternoon, Attorney David Chun from a U.S. Attorney's office stepped into Judge Caprio's chambers. He explained what had really been happening behind the scenes. "We've been investigating the Montgomerys for over a year and a half," he said. "We knew Vanessa would eventually end up here for one of her reckless driving cases. We want a community to see that even the rich, even the connected, must answer to justice." The judge listened quietly. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just nodded, understanding what it meant, not just for one woman, but for everyone watching. Because that day wasn't about punishment. It was about proof that the law still meant something. By evening, the story was everywhere. Headlines screamed across the news. Trophy wife arrested in Judge Caprio's courtroom. Federal charges unveiled live. The world watched. But the moment that mattered most came quietly 3 days later. Christina knocked on his chamber door. "Judge, someone's here to see you." It was Maria Santos, the nurse, still in her scrubs, still humble, but this time she carried a small smile. She stood in the doorway, nervous. "I hope it's okay that I came by," she said softly. "I just wanted to thank you." The judge looked surprised. "Thank me? You don't owe me thanks, Mrs. Santos. You did the right thing." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "When I was in court that day, I heard that woman laugh at me. It hurt, Your Honor. I work so hard, and I try to raise my kids right. And for a moment, I felt small. But then I saw what happened. I saw that even people like her have to face justice. You show me that the law really does protect people like us." Judge Caprio smiled gently. "Mrs. Santos, you showed yourself that. You walked into that courtroom with respect. You took responsibility. That's dignity, and dignity is worth more than every diamond in the world." And right then, Judge Caprio realized the truest kind of justice isn't in punishment, it's in restoration. Weeks passed. The Montgomery case unraveled like a thread pulled from silk. Federal agents uncovered millions in unpaid taxes, fake charities, and offshore accounts. Vanessa's husband, Richard, accepted a plea deal. 15 years in federal prison, forfeiture of assets, full restitution. Vanessa refused to plead. She went to trial, and she lost. 12 years in federal prison. But the real twist came months later, in a single envelope. One morning, Christina entered the judge's chambers holding a plain, white letter. "Judge, this came from the Federal Correctional Facility. It's from her." He opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter from Vanessa Montgomery. "Your Honor," it began, "you have no reason to read this, but I needed to write it." Her words were raw, honest, stripped of pride. "I spent my entire life believing money was the answer to everything. If I wanted something, I bought it. If someone stood in my way, I paid them off. I never worked for anything. I married wealth, and I thought that made me special. But I was wrong. I laughed at people who actually earned their living. I mocked people who struggled. I believed respect could be purchased, until the day you showed me it can't." Judge Caprio sat back, eyes wet. He continued reading. "I understand now what you meant that day. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character. It can buy silence, but not peace. I wish I had learned that 30 years ago, but I'm learning it now, even if it's too late." And for the first time, the judge realized even the arrogant can learn once they've lost everything but the truth. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, not out of forgiveness, but as a reminder that sometimes justice isn't about revenge, it's about awakening. Months later, a news release arrived. The state had recovered nearly $3 million in unpaid taxes from the Montgomerys. Judge Caprio smiled when he read what they did with it. They used the money to start a scholarship for nursing students. They named it the Dignity and Service Scholarship. And the very first recipient was Maria Santos' daughter, a young girl who wanted to become a nurse, just like her mother. That's when it hit him justice had come full circle. That day, Judge Caprio stood by his window, watching the sunset over Providence. He thought of Maria, humble, hard-working. He thought of Vanessa, broken but learning. And he thought of his own father's words. "Frank, the measure of a person isn't what they have. It's what they do when no one is watching." He whispered softly, "You were right, Dad." Then he turned to the camera and spoke directly, his voice gentle but strong. "Money can buy a lot of things, lawyers, clothes, comfort, but it can't buy integrity. It can't buy respect. It can't buy your way above the law. The law is the great equalizer, the one place where a nurse and a millionaire stand on the same ground. And that's exactly how it should be. Because in the end, respect costs nothing, but it's worth everything." He paused, then added with a soft smile, "If you believe in equal justice and kindness, in doing what's right, share this story. Let the world remember that in America, no one stands above the law, not even the ones who think they do." He lifted his gavel one last time. Court adjourned. If you believe in justice, respect, and doing what's right, share the story. Because the world needs to remember, true wealth is character,